Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Thursday, June 11th, 2026. I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square's state government reporter. In today's episode, Washington's push to accelerate clean energy projects took center stage today before the Washington State Supreme Court. This is that massive Horse Heaven Hills project in the Tri-Cities, the one that former Governor Jay Inslee kind of pushed through. May have bypassed some local concerns and maybe having to take a step back in that project, even though we're nearly 6 years in the making on it. Then a Puyallup wrestler, a sophomore, has joined alliances with the ADF, the Alliance Defending Freedom, now representing her in a lawsuit. This is a student who last December, after being a wrestler since she was a little girl, did not realize that she was going up against a biological male who identified as a female in a match. She claims she was sexually assaulted during that match. It's captured on video. Well, now the case is moving forward, federal district court, with the Alliance Defending Freedom coming alongside this young woman. So one of her lead attorneys spoke with me about this case, and we'll share that with you. Finally, have you heard what's happening in Kitsap County? If you live there, you've probably heard about the kerfuffle going on with the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office. At this point, what we have is the sheriff, in about 2 weeks from now, suddenly resigning, and 4 other command staff also leaving at the same time. Now, how much is this actually about budget cuts and sort of pension decisions for these law enforcement members, or are politics potentially at play here? Kitsap County Sheriff's candidate, Rick Cuss, weighs in on that. All right, so let's dive in. It's been close to 6 years, I think, after project plans were initially unveiled in the Tri-Cities for a massive wind and solar farm. The case was argued this morning before the state Supreme Court. This thing has been going back and forth for all of these years. Now, opponents of this project, which is called the Horse Heaven Hills project, contend that the state's Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, FSEC for short, and former Democratic Governor Jay Inslee failed to properly account for some of the seriously negative impacts on the environment and on surrounding communities and on some tribal interests. And there's also the ferruginous hawk, how much room they need for nesting, and some concerns with those massive, wind turbines, fire dangers, a lot of other concerns in that dry part of the state. And of course, then for the folks that live there, there's the destruction of their landscape views and the impact on property values. So Tri-Cities Cares, one of the community groups that has been pushing against this project for several years now, also Benton County and the Yakama Nation, all filed separate petitions seeking to overturn the final decision on what the scope of the project would be. And that goes back to October of 2024. And justices considered the petitions, and those arguments took place today. They kind of consolidated all of those cases into one, and those arguments went before the state's high court today. So here are arguments made by J. Richard Aramburu. He's attorney for Tri-Cities Cares. This was part of his opening statement.
I'm Richard Aramburu, representing Tri-City Cares, one of the petitioners in this matter. 7-0, a shutout before FSEC Council. The unanimous council determined that mitigations, serious mitigations to protect tribal interests, visual interests of the 300,000 people in the Tri-Cities should be imposed. The only dissent from the FSEC Council was 2 members who wanted to go further with that. In fact, the FSEC decision said, we find this is easy. This is easy to conclude that there are significant impacts on the community. FSEC concluded that it would not kill the project, but it would take out those parts of the project that so interfered with the rights of the public, with the rights of the Yakama Nation, and following this court's mandate in Columbia River Keeper to which said the F6 overriding goal is to avoid or mitigate adverse impacts from energy projects. That's their overriding goal. The F6 decision appropriately addressed those matters and appropriately concluded the mitigations should be adopted. And keep in mind that FSIC, this wasn't a simple lineup at FSIC. These are all government appointed folks. They come from Commerce, they come from the UTC. This is a hardcore group of people looking at a project. They spent 8 days, 2,000 pages of transcript, 34 witnesses during the course of the administrative hearing. When it gets to the governor, for all we know, never even visited the project, never listened to a word of the transcript or otherwise. So the decision of the FSIC Council the first time around was absolutely correct.
Now, the group behind this massive project is actually located in Colorado. They're called Scout Clean Energy. And Phil Talmadge, former Supreme Court Justice here in Washington, argued for those project developers.
Thank you. May it please the court, Phil Talmadge here representing respondent Scout. Scout has been working on this project to bring it to fruition for 6 years. 6 years. 5.5 years ago, it initially applied for this particular project. And the process that was undertaken worked as the legislature envisioned it. The opponents of this project are not here to improve it, they're here to kill it. They've told you very directly that they want the approval overturned, and their efforts to provide for additional process are in anticipation of the fact that the Trump administration is proposing to end significant tax credits for renewable energy projects. They hope to use that as a tool to defeat this project.
So help me out a little bit, Council. You said this project proposal is started 7 years ago. How many windmills were initially proposed? I'm just trying to go through the 500 pages of the project, because it seems to be a battle over numbers now.
Well, it's why, Your Honor, I said the process worked. I want the court to step back for a moment. What we had here was a project that was determined to be consistent with local Benton County land use requirements. Then there was a process. When the application was made, there were public informational hearings about the project. There was a significant hearing on land use. There were significant hearings on SEPA. There were government-to-government consultations with not only the Yakima Nation, but the CTUIR that has 80% of the treaty-ceded lands on which the project rests. You have the adjudication that took place over 8 days. You had the process before after the governor's remand recommendation. There were public hearings, opportunities by the FSEC on that. The hearing process was robust, to say the least. 64,000 pages of record. We're not talking about something that was done superficially here. 64,000 pages of record.
To give you some idea of the massive scale of this project, it would be on some 72,500 acres along Interstate 82, just south of the Tri-Cities. Now, originally, Scout Clean Energy wanted 244 of these wind turbines, each about 500 feet tall, 3 giant solar arrays, and then, of course, battery storage. For that, they claimed that would be a power generator for the area. The project, again, scaled back originally by FSEC, and then Governor Inslee pushed back, and he said, no, this should be just as big as it always was. Our clean energy climate goals require us to push forward with this project. But again, the lawsuits, have kind of been holding things up to date. So we're going to see what the state Supreme Court says in this matter. And it may well end up being something that goes back to current Governor Bob Ferguson to consider. Of course, he's a Democrat as well, and someone who is really behind all these clean energy projects. So We're in close contact with the players on both sides of this, and we will let you know as soon as there's any decision from the state Supreme Court. Now, on behalf of a teenage female wrestler from Puyallup, the Alliance Defending Freedom and their attorneys have filed a lawsuit against the Washington State Interscholastic Activities Association, WIAA, and other state officials because this goes back to an incident from last December. Biological male who identified as a female allegedly sexually assaulted the female wrestler in that match. She did not know that she was going to be competing in that match up against a male who was identifying as a female. She had no idea. This female athlete who's been out there public, Callie Keeler, again, being represented now by the Alliance Defending Freedom. And here's some video of that match. It was taken by Callie's mom, is that officials waited 53 days to report the sexual assault to law enforcement. Now, the mom had gone, Callie's mom had gone to the school just within a day or two of this match happening, gave him the video or showed him the video and said, here's what happened. And we believe she was sexually assaulted. What are you going to do? They didn't report it, and they're mandatory reporters. So that's a big part of this lawsuit from ADF. So I want you to see part of the conversation that I had with ADF lead attorney on this case, Suzanne Beecher.
Callie is a sophomore in high school. She's been wrestling since she was 4. And at a wrestling match in December, an all-girls tournament, Callie unknowingly wrestled against a male athlete who identified as female. And during the match, she was sexually assaulted by this male athlete. Her mom immediately reported what happened to the school, and they didn't hear anything for months until it hit the media. And then the school finally did what they're required to do and reported the case to law enforcement. The school did not report it for 2 months, and they're required to essentially immediately report sexual assaults. And this is just an example of what happens when gender ideology comes before the rights of girls, comes before safety and fairness. There are victims, and in this case, it's such an extreme example of how girls get hurt when schools are putting their rights last. So the WIA has a policy that that's right, they don't tell girls or their parents if they're going to be matched against a male athlete, if they're going to compete against a male athlete. And in this case, after this horrible thing happened to Callie, her mom asked, as a supportive measure, given what happened, at least could they let her know if she'd be matched against a male so that she could forfeit the match. And they said, no, under the policy, they can't let her know if she's going to be wrestling against a male athlete.
So ADF contends that WIAA, the Interscholastic Activities Association, and the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction should be held accountable for putting Callie in the situation. Beecher, the attorney from ADF, told me that Callie is an incredibly brave young woman to take on this fight.
Yeah, Callie is an incredibly strong and courageous person. What happened to her should never have happened. She should never have been put in that position. And she shouldn't have to be in the position that she is now of advocating for her rights because the school is failing to advocate for them. She should not have been on the mat with a male athlete. She should have the chance to compete on a safe and level playing field. And she should not have to stand up as a minor. The adults in the room should be standing up for the rights of girls instead of denying them those rights.
Now, this case is filed in federal district court here in Washington, and the attorney, Beecher, said they're now just waiting for the state's official response. This was just filed on Tuesday, so it'll be some time before we get a response from the state. And then there's really no legal timeline for the proceedings at this point, but we're in touch with the players and we'll stay on top of this one for sure. And now to Kitsap County, where Sheriff John Gese announced he is retiring effective June 26, just a couple of weeks away, alongside 4 other high-ranking command staff members of the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office. Now, the abrupt departures are attributed to ongoing budget cuts and pension timing decisions because the Kitsap County Board of Commissioners did make some pretty significant cuts to the sheriff's office in 2025. There's been a lot of pressure on them as a result of that. So the sheriff, who originally planned to serve until the end of his term, is again stepping down early, and those 4 other command staff members at the same time all leaving. So it is a major blow to the sheriff's office, but we're asking questions about potential politics that could be at play here, as it's now the Kitsap County Democrats who will announce 3 potential nominees to be interim sheriff. So those 3 names will go then back to the Kitsap County Board of Commissioners, and they will make a decision on who that interim sheriff replacement is going to be. Now, Republican candidate for sheriff in Kitsap County is Rick Kuss, and I spoke with him about this morning. You may recall he was one of the plaintiffs who had to sue after Senate Bill 5974 took effect. That was the anti-sheriff bill, basically that would allow an unelected body to find reasons to remove elected sheriffs from office. Now, Rick Kuss has a lengthy military career, currently a deputy in the King County Sheriff's Department, but SB 5974 would have disqualified him from running. However, then a Thurston County judge got involved and basically put that measure on hold, seeing some potentially serious constitutional issues with it. So Rick Kuss got past that hurdle so he could continue his candidacy for Kitsap County Sheriff. But now there's this shakeup in the office that Kuss is seeking.
So I'm not surprised about the sheriff retiring because it's just that's how they do it in politics. The incumbent resigns to get a new incumbent in there of the same party, so they have the advantage. So I think everybody saw that coming. I think the surprise is the fact that how many people are leaving at the same time. And I've always been trained in leadership roles. When things get tough, you stick around to see it through. And so I'm really surprised that some people didn't delay their retirement. I understand that there's benefits of retiring before July financially, and I know there's personal things going on, but when things get tough, leaders step up and they need to be there to ensure continuity and provide leadership, except to the ranks as well. Like having a strong leader there to represent you through the tough times, not all just leaving. And so it's quite shocking, and I think the community and everybody outside the community is looking at Kitsap right now and just going, what the heck is going on?
Now, I reached out this morning to the Kitsap County Board of Commissioners about the sheriff's exit and what is next, and I received an email response from Kim Pleeger. Apologize if I'm not saying your name right, Kim. She's the communications director with the Kitsap County Board of Commissioners. She thanked me for reaching out and basically explained that the Washington State Constitution requires the Board of County Commissioners to appoint replacements for vacancies in any partisan county elected office within 60 days from the date of vacancy. The appointee must be a member of the same political party as the elected officer who previously held the seat. So now we have the Kitsap County Democratic Central Committee putting up those names. Now, what's interesting here is that at this point, there are only 2 candidates who filed for the upcoming November election for Kitsap County Sheriff. King County Sheriff's Deputy Rick Kuss, who you just heard from, and Detective Sergeant Brandon Myers. Now, Myers is a Democrat. And Kuss told me today he suspects that Myers may end up being the one that the Board of Commissioners appoints to be interim sheriff. Again, they're going to get 3 potential nominees from the Kitsap County Democratic Party to go to the Board of Commissioners. Rick Kuss thinks that one of those is likely to be his opponent in the race. So even though it's an elected position, he would still have to run in sheriff if run in November, I should say, if in fact he is appointed to that interim position. But is it perhaps an advantage to already be in that position as interim sheriff for several months before the November election? Does that give him maybe an edge in the eyes of voters, seeing him actually in the position of sheriff? A fair question to maybe ask at this point. We're going to be watching this in the weeks to come. The Board of Commission person that responded to my email told me that by July 13th is when they expect to have the 3 names, but it could come even sooner. And then there will be some interviews and they'll make a decision. I promise we'll be watching that one as well. So that is a wrap on today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily for this Thursday, June the 11th. Tomorrow's a Friday. We're there again. Lots of sunshine. Hope you get a chance to get out and enjoy it. Check out our Center Square Washington page for these stories and more. And I hope to see you again tomorrow.